We're gonna have fun. It's a little bit of a technical workshop because some of the property tax rules has changed. But we're gonna have a little bit of fun. I'm gonna give you a little bit of update on what our office is doing and the different ways that we can help you, and then we're gonna jump into some of these wealth building opportunities, property tax savings opportunities, and it's an interactive workshop. So if you have questions, raise a hand. If you're like, I don't want to give you my home address, don't do it. But if you're like, want to roll the dice, let's go have fun. Okay. Yeah. All right, I live dangerously. So as Tom said, I'm Jordan Marks, your favorite San Diego County Assessor, Recorder County Clerk. I was elected in 2022, and I did serve as the Chief Deputy Taxpayer Advocate before. I'm a licensed attorney, and I also am a certified property tax appraiser. Also, something that a lot of people don't know is I went through the Cybersecurity Executive Program at USD, working with the FBI and the police officers of the City of San Diego, because my office, as you will learn, has a lot of sensitive information from the community. So we make sure that we're protecting you not only in your home and from overpaying on your taxes, but also maintaining and protecting your most sensitive data. Lastly, well, besides getting the County Taxpayer Watchdog Award, which is a great honor from the community, I also serve a lot in the community. And while it's not up there, I'm actually on the advisory for the Autism Tree Project Foundation. I know you mentioned that you serve the community. There's so much more that we all could be doing in different ways, but I appreciate what you're doing there. Most of you may be familiar with the USS Midway. Yep. That is a gem. I'm on the leadership there, and then also the Small Business Development Center of North County and San Diego Oasis, which is right here in Grossmont Center, is a gem. They do a lot of lifelong learning and continuing education for folks that are seniors. And I'll tell you, I had fun. I walked in by accident, though, to one of their dating continues in life classes. Well, I got a couple of messages in my DM afterwards. So just be careful where, great, cooking classes and world history. And I even do a property tax class there every once in a while. So most importantly, I want you to understand is how my office is structured. At the core of everything we do is my accountability starts with you, the citizens of San Diego County. And then from there, I have an executive team. We oversee 450 staff members, a $90 million budget. But our accountability is with you, which is why my office, everything that you're going to learn about today starts with one great thing. Our number one priority is we put people first with great customer service. That is what our drive is every day, whether it's property taxes, records, the different services you're going to hear about. Now, we also have a great customer service rating because of that. We achieved last year a 98.8 positive customer service rating from over 6,000 customer feedback comment cards. We return over $3 million annually back to the county budget. We change our hours and operations. We think about what do you need, not about what do we need, and I'll show you more about that. More services online, less paper, more innovation. That's what my office is pushing for every day. And if you can believe it, we're actually a government office that recently reduced fees. And I'll just talk to you. Some of you are pulling your property records. Before, you could only do that by coming into my office. And when I first started there, it was $2 for every page. So a 10-page document would cost you $20. Then we did a fee study while Ernie was there. We dropped it down to $2 for the first page of research in the document and 5 cents for each additional page to copy the actual Xerox cost. So that $20 document became $2.45. And today it's online, 45 cents, the entire document, no matter what the size is, and we email it to you within the hour. That's the progression of great customer service and what technology should look like. And Sam uses that service. It's good, right?
All the time, yeah. It's been an amazing change.
So anyway, better, faster, cheaper. That's what we're looking for and serving the community. While I was the taxpayer advocate, I filled this position with Stephen Lee. So if you ever need any help, he's available. You can find him. Myself, I'll have my information up afterwards. But his goal is to ensure fairness, provide education, and also correct any systemic issues. Use our office and tell us how we can be better. We have no ego. That's how we achieve a great customer service rating. 5 offices across the county. Closest to here is our Santee office. It's new, it's beautiful, and it also hosts our county archives. Why is it important that we have a county archive? I'll tell you why. This is from the California Constitution. You in the California Constitution are guaranteed, among things to enjoy, is life, liberty, and acquiring, possessing, and protecting property. Part of protecting property is actually showing that you own the property. And so in some counties across the state of California, if you go to find your record to say, I own this, the title, chain of title or the property record, it might be in a basement next to a puddle of water, right? And what happens there? We get mold. We know what that looks like. That means that your records are not safe. They're not protected. And so we knew that we could do better. These are guarded, temperature-controlled documents. We built this archive, and we're putting your documents in there, so that way we are securing the safety of your chain of title to your most important asset. Okay, just a couple of other fun things. I'm just going to break down what we do at the office, because today you're going to walk out thinking about how I saved you some money and how Sam is helping build generational wealth for your family in the future. But you might also know, hey, well, what about that other thing that I helped you with later? And you're gonna find out what I can do. As the assessor, we appraise all real and personal property. We have over 1 million parcels in the county of San Diego. We're actually the 5th largest jurisdiction in the United States of America. San Diego is a big deal, right? 91% of those parcels have what's called Prop 13 protection. If you didn't think you had it, well, trust me, I'm pretty sure you do. And we're gonna walk through what that means in a little bit. We also are the business personal property taxes. So we have over 55,000 businesses that we work with. And then we also have boats, planes, and penguins that we have taxes for. Steve, you know where the penguins are at?
Penguins?
That's right.
Okay.
Well, the taxable penguins are at SeaWorld, and the non-taxable penguins are at the zoo. So not only do we put value on things for taxable purposes, but we also exempt or remove taxes. And so what that really looks like is for homeowners exemptions, disabled veterans, we're able to help by law reduce their property taxes, which led to record high property tax savings for San Diegans last year, but over $275 million. That's also affordable housing and places like the Chamber of Commerce here, or other venues that are part of making the community a better place to live. We're also the recorder. So we are the record keeper of your life's most important moments. Those are your birth certificates, your death certificates, your marriage certificates. Some people might be like, I don't remember my birth certificate, but at least you got a record of it. Okay, but also we do deeds, your real estate property deeds, and that's what comes back to, and that's what we preserve in our office. So when you purchase properties, and I will tell you, if you need a copy of any of that, in my office, free parking, 15 minutes or less, we're going to get you in and out to get the copy of those records. All right, lastly, I'm the Commissioner of Civil Marriages and the County Clerk. So as the Commissioner of Civil Marriages, I issue about 25,000 licenses per year, and we perform about actually half those ceremonies on site. Anybody here get married at the County of San Diego? Well, that's actually me and my wife 10 years ago. I surprised her. We had an engagement and marriage in the same day. She didn't know. We called it an engarage. I told you I might be a tax man, but I live dangerously, okay? So she said yes, and then we also issue fictitious business name statements. So if you are starting a new business and you need to file your fictitious business name, that's at my office. And many of us that here at the table that are business owners or doing business, you might know the DBA, doing business as, same thing, that's through my office, and we help you with that. Okay, now some people like to say I do great customer service, but we're just gonna give you 2 quick examples. This is the story of the marriage hut. It's kind of a little bit of a love story. Bear with me here for a moment. Sam loves love stories.
Absolutely.
He's a romantic. He loves saving you money and your family too. But when the governor and the pandemic hit, the governor shut down all government offices, right? 24 hours. And some of us know you had 24 hours to shut your doors and shut down. Well, we actually had 1,700 couples ready to get married. And we believe in great customer service. I told you that, and honoring our promise. So, well, 58 counties out there. Well, 57 spent their 24 hours figuring out how to shut down their doors. Our county was the only one in the state of California that spent that 24 hours figuring out how to stay open. And we actually took over a vacant snack shop in the county of San Diego Waterfront Park. And through those 2 windows, we continued our services, issued licenses, and performed ceremonies. And that's one of the Marine couples that we're able to do that for. Because, like Sam's going to teach you today, you need to think about taking care of your loved one. And part of that in the state of California and through other services, I know we have insurance here, when you get married, you're entitled to other benefits for your loved ones. And so that was a very important service that we provided. Well, and then after the pandemic, you're like, I survived a year with that person. You're like, maybe we'll get married. We had a lot of requests for marriages, so we opened up on nights, weekends. We met our customers with their demand, and that's what great customer service looks like. Okay.
Do you do anything for breakups?
Well, my wife's a divorce attorney, so I try to stay away from that. Okay? I'll leave that to the other, I like to say we only do the civil marriages, not the uncivil ones. Okay. So let's jump in, talk about property taxes. In order to understand property tax savings and property taxes, you have to understand Prop 13. Prop 13 is the basis of our property tax system. It was passed by you, the voters, and Prop 13 says that I, purchaser of property, agree to pay 1% of that value in a fair and open market transaction. So Dave, you're not like you're buying a property from your brother for like $1, you know, like yeah, whatever that fair market value is, I'll pay 1%, and that amount can go up 2% per year. That is what makes our property tax system affordable, because many of you are business owners. If you know what the cost is going to be, you can budget for it. And Prop 13 allows you now to predict your property taxes, budget for it. That is the genius of our affordable property tax system. Beforehand, every year, the assessor's office would come out and say, what's the value today? And it was a guessing game. So every year you wouldn't know what your tax bill, how's the market doing? It's like gasoline, you drive to the pump, you're like, what's going to hit me today? I don't know. Well, sometimes it drops and sometimes it pops. Recently we've seen it pop, right? But if you bought your property, you could lock in and know exactly what it's going to be and predict your taxes over the life of the ownership of the property. Unless you change ownership or do something to the property. We can talk about that today. Yes?
So now there's some people in state legislature trying to undo Prop 13. What's going on with that?
Well, I'm going to put that to the end. We'll put that on the if we have time question. Is that okay, Dave? And let's talk about saving you some money under Prop 13 today. Okay, but after Prop 13 was passed, came along Prop 8. That same year, the voters said, well, what happens if my property value drops below what that Prop 13 tax amount is? We can actually, and you'll see it in the red, we can actually lower your taxes temporarily, and it comes back with the market. Not under that 2% restriction, but if it drops 10% one year and comes back 10% one year, we can do that, never to exceed the Prop 13 cap. So in this example, you could see if the market jumped up, your taxes stayed the same. If the market jumped down, we actually reduce it, but as it comes back, that star is where it limits it, because that's where your Prop 13 protection comes in. And I'm going to tell you, we actually in 2022 had 18,300 homeowners that bought as the market popped and dropped. And we lowered their property taxes about $14 million proactively. Now, normally you're thinking, don't you have to apply for this stuff? You do. And I'll tell you, in 55 other counties across the state of California, you had to apply or you missed out. In San Diego County, we proactively did it and tried to capture everybody that was there. And so now the market's back, so we've returned those taxes to what they were before. But for 1 year, those new homeowners got a reprieve on their taxes. Some of them $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. All right. Now, you're like, Jordan, I understand this idea. Prop 13 locks in my assessed value, my lower amount. That's that Prop 13 taxable amount. How do I know how much that is? Right? Because I could tell you what my home might sell for today. That's the market price. But how do I know what my taxable value is, that Prop 13 amount? It's on your tax bill. You go to sdttc.com, pull it up, and it says right there, the assessed value, the taxable value. So in this example here, the taxable value says $252,000, or at 1%, it's about $2,500, right? But the home might be worth $1 million today. That's the average price. Well, if you're paying taxes on $1 million, you'd be paying at 1%, $10,000. But because that might be the Prop 13 amount, you're paying $2,500. Is that kind of everybody good with this? All right.
So is that basically the value of the house when you buy it, right?
It's the purchase price at the time. Yes, it's the value at the time of purchase, and that's the amount that locks in. Okay. Now, along came Prop 19, and this was passed by the voters in 2020, and this changed a lot of the intergenerational and the wealth building tools that we're looking at today. Okay, so how many of you have will or trust? Okay, how many of you have looked at that since 2020? Time to refresh, because the rules got changed. Okay, so here's the deal. This is the Home Protection for Seniors, Severely Disabled, Families, Victims of Wildfire, and Natural Disasters Act. It sounds really nice. I think they were going to put unicorns and lollipops in the title, and it barely passed, but it passed, and so it changed some of the rules. Some are not so good, and some are good, and we're going to walk you through that. The two that I'm going to walk you through today are what's called the parent-to-child or the grandparent-to-grandchild, okay? Now, some of you are probably thinking, why is there a parent-to-child and a grandparent-to-grandchild? Well, as Steve just learned, who he just had twins, he's going to love his grandkids probably a little bit more than his kids. It happens. I have a kid. The grandparents love him. I'm sure they'd love to leave their house to him. The rules say that it has to go parent to child, but if the parents have passed, then that generation is not there. You can go to the grandkids. But what we see a lot of, this is a tip, is happy grandparent is like, your parents are okay. I'm just going to leave it directly to the grandkid. Great grandparent, sorry. Well, he's trying to go to the great grandkid. You can't skip a generation. Otherwise, you can't pass the taxable value down, okay? I see this all the time. I thought I was really taking care of my grandkid when I don't like my kid so much. Okay, but the law says you have to follow that strain right there. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is senior exclusion from reassessment. We're going to call that the senior transfer, okay? The two that I want you to know about, just so you're dangerous, and the rule on this one is, if it sounds like I need help on this one, you're going to call Jordan. Let's say it. Call
Jordan.
All right, here we go. All right, that's your answer on this one. Disaster relief. We've seen it. Floods, fires, COVID, right? I thought we might even see locusts come out at us or something. If the governor declares it a state of emergency, we can go ahead and provide you property tax relief. And what happened was when the people that passed Prop 19 wrote the law, they actually forgot to erase the old rules. Never happens, right? Copy, paste, and you forget to delete. Well, that's what happened. So we actually have two sets of rules of disaster relief. And you're like, Jordan, which one do I use? Well, remember, I told you call Jordan. My team of property tax experts will look at both options. One requires selling a property, one allows you to keep your property and get another property. We'll walk you through the options, but just know you have 1 year to do it. So call us. Anything happens to your property, even damage of over $10,000, right? Anybody has damage to their home, we can help reduce your taxes. Right now in San Diego, we just saw the floods hit, right? We are now sitting with folks and walking them through the different options for disaster relief and helping them. We will make sure we're maximizing the opportunity for you and your family. The second is if you become severely and permanently disabled. That means that maybe you served our country and unfortunately came back and you can no longer be in a 3-story townhome and you have to move to a ranch-style home. Or I even had somebody in Campo one time that was allergic to dirt. Did they know that there was dirt in Campo? Yes, I'm sure they did. But over time, they became debilitatingly allergic to dirt. They had a doctor's documentation. We helped them move their low tax base. It means that they weren't punished for having to go buy another house. They got to take their low Prop 13 amount with them. It's going to be the same rules as the senior transfer, but just know if something happens to somebody and they need to adjust their lifestyle or even put an elevator in their home or something to adjust for a disability, or they become severely or permanently disabled, we can help them out, okay? All right, now let's jump into the parent to child. This is the former Prop 58, grandparent to grandchild. These are the old rules. Don't take a picture of this. They're the old rules. But I want you to know it's there because Dave's like, they talk about these old rules because some people are trying to bring them back. That's why I try to educate on it. Under the old rules, you got to give your kids your primary residence. Whatever the tax bill you had on there, give it to them. They didn't have to live in the property. There was no restriction on it. And if you had other property, that's anything that's not your primary residence. That's a Airbnb rental. It could be a vacation home. It could be a second home on the same block that you've been saving for them because you want your great-grandchildren to move there, right, with you, Steve? Okay, my point is it's anything that's not your primary residence. There was an amount that you could actually, up to $1 million of assessed value, you could give to their kids and help them bring their low taxes over. Prop 19 wiped that all out. Prop 19 said, we're going to allow you to give your primary residence to your kids, and it has to become their primary residence. It's a big difference. Okay? If your kids do not plan on coming back into the state or they're moving somewhere else, this transfer and opportunity is no longer applicable to you. They have to move into your home, and it has to have been your primary residence. Okay? And now there's actually a cap on it. I will walk you through the math. I told you I'm an attorney, not a mathematician. You could do the math with me. I promise. We'll get some examples. And the kids have to keep it as their primary residence, and they have to claim it within 1 year. I'll walk you through what that looks like. And those other properties, that could have been the restaurant, the multifamily units, it's all gone. What it means is you get reassessed, or the taxes go to market value when you either give it to them or upon your date of death. Because in the state of California, when you pass, you can no longer own property. I know it's a crazy thought. You're no longer here, you can't own it. Even if it's in your trust. The day you pass is the day the beneficiaries get the property. Okay? That's a big thing to remember. A lot of people are like, it's in my trust. It didn't go to my kids yet. If it's in the trust and you've passed, it's with the kids now.
That must have shut down the Catholic Church, not selling parents.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I like to say death and taxes are two things. I'm more familiar with the taxes. I try to stay away from the death. So, and then lastly, the kids have to stay in the property. Okay, so I'll walk you through what that looks like. Okay, so here's our fun example. Number one, parents bought the property for $100,000. Over time, it's gone up 2% per year. So their assessed value, that's the amount on their tax bill, is $160,000. At 1%, $1,600. That's what they're paying in taxes. This is a very common number out here in East County, right? The market value might be $2 million today. If the kids were paying 1% of $2 million, their tax bill would be $20,000. Yes. So that's a lot of savings. Prop 13 is saving that couple, the senior couple, $1,600 versus $20,000, right? That's a lot. So what you do is you take the assessed value, $160,000, and you add the benefit of Prop 19. That's $1 million. That's the cap. So your new cap is what we call 1.16. You deduct that from the market value. Here the market value is $2 million. The difference is what we call excess. $840,000 is the difference. You add that on to the amount that was on the original tax bill, the $160,000. That becomes the new taxable amount of $1 million. The kids are going to pay $10,000 a year in property taxes. That's with the Prop 19 benefit versus the $1,600 bill they would have gotten under the old rules. Okay? It's a big change. It's a lot for people to digest because not only are you passing your kids the property, but many people for years had planned that they'd give them the same tax bill. But that's what we have to plan for, and that's why we have a planning session today. Okay, the formula is on the slides. You're going to get the slides. Don't worry about it. If you're like, I need help doing the math, call me. We'll help you out. But here's another example that is a little bit more realistic for people that were later buyers that bought in late 90s or 2000. You bought a home for $300,000, 2% per year increase, right? That now paying tax based on $420,000 or at 1%, $4,200. Okay, the home today in the market is worth 1.3. You take the taxable amount, $420, and you add $1 million. If that amount there is greater than what you could sell it for in the market, everything stays the same. The kids are going to pay $4,200 a year. Taxes won't change, okay? All right. Here's some things that I want you to pay attention to on this parent-to-child piece. One, the benefit is significantly reduced, okay? Leading to people to selling about 6,000 to 7,000 more properties a year. Why? Because there is a federal benefit. Okay, I'm talking to you about state taxes and property taxes. There's also IRS tax code. So sometimes you got to make sure the dance partners go together well, right? Well, the IRS says if you pass your kids the property upon your death up to certain amounts, they get what's called a step up in basis, which means the capital gains tax that they would pay from selling a property is wiped away. So if you wipe away any tax for selling the property and there's no longer a low property tax to keep, some kids are like, well, maybe I might not want to keep the property. I don't want to be a landlord. I didn't like that vacation home. Or I'm in another state or another part of the state and I just don't want the headache of having a second property, right? But for years, if you only had to pay $1,600 a year, you're like, of course I'd keep the property. But $10,000, why don't I just sell it and we'll put it in the stock market? It might be something more manageable for me. So we're seeing more properties go to market. Okay, the transfer has to be between two individuals, right? Parent to child. I'm just going to look back at my slides here, make sure. Okay, there is a benefit for people that are not family members. I just want to go over this real quick. What's happened is that for years, we've only talked about parent to child. But now we actually are exploring the different tax codes and promoting different programs because sometimes it makes more sense. Under the Prop 19 tax codes, if your kids move into the property and make it their primary residence, but they ever decide to move out or turn it into a rental, the benefit gets taken away, and moving forward after that point, we actually restore the higher tax amount. So one of the ways that people can get around it is what we have what's called the co-tenancy exclusion. If there are two people on the title and one of them lives with you before you pass, that's equaling 100%. And this gets a little technical, but that's why you got good people like Sam that can help make sure that you're doing it legally correct afterwards. And they're not a family member, or they are your grandkids, or they're a niece or nephew. I even had somebody that really enjoyed their gardener. The rest of their family passed, and Joe was his family. So Joe and his family moved in with this senior. He was 85, and they lived together 5 years before he passed. He used this co-tenancy option, put him on title, and when he passed the property down to Joe and his family. We were able to keep the property taxes exactly the same. And second, we were able to, if they ever move out of the property or turn into a rental, their taxes won't go up. That restrictive rule in the parent to child is not applicable here. So this became another option, especially for people that are like, I didn't really like my family all that much, but I have a friend that we live together, or a loved one, or my niece or nephew, right? I'm the fun aunt that, they came to live with me in my last days, but they have to live with you for at least a year before you pass. Any questions about the non-family option or the non-parent to child option? Okay, so here's some takeaways. Again, as I was mentioning, 6 to 7 properties, 7,000 properties are going onto the market. You have to file for within 1 year the homeowner's exemption, or the property goes up. The homeowner's exemption declares that this is your primary residence. Now, a lot of things are happening. If you don't have a will and trust, your property goes into probate, which is terrible. Why is that terrible, Sam?
Can tell you all the reasons.
He's going to tell you all the reasons, but mostly because it will take a good chunk of your money out, and he'll get into that. Okay, so even if you're going to probate, even if you're going to all these things, file the homeowner's exemption right away. When in doubt, fill it out. You don't get punished for having filled it out and not actually taking it. Second is people are not reporting the deaths of the trustees or the beneficiaries or other folks that are affiliated with the trust. So let's say your parents have passed and you didn't tell our office about the death, and you're supposed to. In fact, I'm actually supposed to issue you a penalty. I don't do it, okay? My office took the opposite view. We're not going to issue a penalty. Instead, we created an ambassador program called the Navigating Loss Ambassadors to help people specifically when their loved one dies. Now, if you have a great attorney, you don't need that Navigating Loss program. But it's just to make sure that we're helping you walk between the different offices and just get the paperwork in order. You lost a loved one, and I know it's the last thing on your mind. But by not reporting the death, what's happening is 2 or 3 years later, my other side of the office that has the records is sending us over the death records to my assessor side and saying, who's died? Okay. Then we go back 2 years to when you died, and we reassess the property then. And guess what? It generates increased tax bills. And by that time, the estate might have closed because they didn't have a great attorney like Sam. So then the kids start pointing their fingers at each other because who wants to pay the bill? Because everybody already got paid out, right? This is what we're seeing happening. And then if you're a realtor and you're the buyer's agent, your buyers are also getting bills later on, and they're calling you. And you're like, oh, why am I still dealing with this? I sold the home 2 years ago. This is what happens when people, so if you're buying a home and you know the person that you're buying it from had become recently deceased, or if you're the family or the person that's helping sell the home, report the death to my office so we can go ahead and start helping move that process along.
Don't you need to report it in order to get a death certificate?
So the death certificate goes to one side of the office, right? That's the recorder side,
Right.
but not to the property tax side, right? So if you have a trust or you have something, you need to report that to my office, okay? If there's real property involved and somebody's died and you're not sure, come into my office. We'll help you figure it out. Okay, and lastly, again, the kids have to stay in the property. If they ever move out, they get reassessed. All right, here's the benefit that was given in exchange, and we're going to just wrap up in the next couple of minutes. In exchange for the slimming down of the parent-to-child transfer, the seniors, if you're over 55, now I have to say this, 55 is not my definition of a senior. It's the government's definition. Damn government. I think 55 is a new 25, okay? But if you're over 55, you can qualify for this senior benefit 3 times in your lifetime. Before it was only 1 time. Now you get 3 times. You sell your primary residence and buy another primary residence. There used to be a restrictive cap that didn't let a lot of people do it. They got rid of that. I'll show you the math. You have 2 years to do the deal, and it's statewide. Before, there's only certain counties that you can go to. So here's an example. Let's say you purchased your home. Mike bought his home for $300,000. Over time, he's paying based on $420,000 or at 1%. Mike's paying $4,200 a year in taxes. He sells his home for $1.5 million. Probably had a great realtor. All right, he bought his replacement property for $1 million. That amount is less than the cap. And you're like, Jordan, what's this cap? The cap is whatever you sell your property for. So if you sell your property for $800,000, that's your cap. If you sell your property for $2 million, that's your cap. If you buy for below whatever that amount is, your taxes stay exactly the same. Here, he bought for $1 million, which is less than 1.5. Taxes stay at $4,200. He's saving $5,800 annually in taxes. The one thing that I will tell you is the cap resets with each transaction. So let's say you sold a $5 million house, right? And you bought another home for $5 million, but your taxes was only $500,000, a really low amount. If your next home you buy for $2 million, your cap goes down to $2 million. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, you don't get to keep the original high saving amount. Every transaction is a new transaction. Okay, here's a above the cap example. So Mike's worked really hard, and he's like, well, I sold my home for 1.5, but I really want to buy something for $2 million. Well, if he had to pay it today at 1%, he'd pay $20,000 a year in taxes. That's terrifying. And for financial planners, they never ask you, well, what are the taxes that you'd like to pay in the future that we could help you retire with? They ask you, what are your taxes that you're paying today? And we'll put that in your retirement calculation, right? So the way it works is you take the difference between your sales price and your purchase price. Right here, he sold for 1.5 and he bought for $2 million. The difference is $500,000. You take that $500,000 and you add it on to whatever your old tax bill was. Here, it's $420. At 1% of $920,000, he's going to pay $9,200 a year in taxes, saving $10,800. That's a huge savings for Mike. Okay, here's some reminders. If Mike is using any portion of his property for a commercial purpose, let's say he's growing something on his property. Mike, what are you growing? Tomatoes for the farmer's market. I know that's what you all were thinking. Okay. Okay. Then we have to carve out that property. Most likely, you have an ADU in the backyard and you're renting it out at the time of sale. If at the time of sale it's rented out, we don't count that ADU towards your primary residence cap. We reduce the property amount by that. So if it's 25% of your property and you sold for $1 million, your new cap is $750,000. Okay? But if you decide to have the renters out on the day of sale, it all gets counted to your primary residence. Divorced couples, only one person gets to take the lower taxable amount, but the other person now gets 2 more times in their lifetime to do the senior transfer. Okay? If you did the parent to child from one home, you can't do a senior transfer from the same home. The benefit only goes one time. If you are a person that wants to buy a property with your kids, can I go and do that? Can I sell my property and then buy a new property using the lower tax base with my kids on title? Yes, you can. Intergenerational buying is really a big thing right now. More people are looking at how do you pool resources to buy together. And by the way, the parent to child has that restrictive thing where you have to live in the house. And if you ever move out, we have to bring your taxes back up. The senior transfer doesn't. So if you do a senior transfer and you're right sizing and you're taking the casita in back and the family is moving in front, you can add your kids on title with 99% of the property and you'll keep 1%. And then when you pass, only 1% of the tax goes up. Meaning that you're essentially giving your kids most of the property, and they can then move out of that property, rent it out, turn it into a rental, and they don't get the taxes when they move out, okay? That restricted, it's just the way the rules were written. So, all right, and then this is what I call my sugar mama, sugar daddy rule. Only one person has to be over 55. So I married a young lady who's 6 years younger than me. I'm a walking coupon. When I hit 55, boom, she's in business. And it doesn't have to be somebody you're married to. It could be somebody who's an investor. As long as it's your primary residence. It has to be the person that is over 55. It's their primary residence. It's 2 deals. And I will say this. I talked about great customer service. It still takes 6 to 9 months to process this application. Why? Because, and it's on our website. It's an easy one-page application. I have a follow-up video. I did it with Pacific Southwest Association of Realtors. They're great. So if you ever forget what I told you, I'll remind you. But why does it take 6 to 9 months to process this one-page application, which we need a government ID to confirm that you're over 55? Because we have to go out and appraise both deals. the purchase and the sale. And we have to rely, if you're coming from another county, for the other county to send us the paperwork. So if they might have 5 people on staff and it might take them 3 months to get there and send it back to us, it's just the process. We say 6 to 9 months, but really if you're within San Diego County, we're popping it out in 90 days, okay? We're generally pretty good about that. And if you file right away, we're going to put a hold on your tax bill so you're not saddled with a higher tax bill until we get everything sorted out. That is great customer service. All right, homeowner's exemption, it will save you $70. Everybody here, if you own a home, raise your hand. You should all be looking at your bill and looking for that word homeowners. If you do not see $7,000 of assessed value coming off the top there and it says 0, that means you're not getting the benefit today. That means you should be emailing me the completed application with your signature and we will get you saving money today. But that is the form that you need to file also when the kids take over the property within a year. We also have something for our veterans. If you are a disabled veteran, 100% VA rated disabled, that is the homeowner's exemption for you. You'll actually get about $1,500 off your property taxes. And when I started in the office, we had about 4,500 disabled veterans qualified for the program. Today, we are at 16,000 plus. We have gone from $7 million to over $26 million, staying in the hands of our San Diego County disabled veterans and their surviving spouses, thanks to the hard work and partnerships with the folks like PSAR and the folks across the county. So really, we are #1 in the state for helping our disabled veterans. We're really proud about that. Send us your referrals. Again, primary residence, VA rated disabled. We need your rating letter, your DD-214. And by the way, do we have veterans here? Anybody here serve? Thank you for your service. And if you didn't know, you can also record your DD-214 at my office for free. We'll hold a record of it because sometimes records get burned. And yeah, there's issues with the VA, right?
Oh, no, it's great.
You walk into my office, we'll get you out. We'll get you a copy of your DD-214 in 5 minutes or less. You can order it online sometime. Over there, you might have to. I sat on the phone for a veteran for 2 hours the other day.
45 cents?
Yeah. We get it for free. Yeah, for the veterans. Okay, and we can go back 8 years. So if a veteran has not filed, I actually just got a $10,000 refund check for a disabled veteran. He's 90 years old, lived in Carlsbad, was a Korean War veteran. He didn't know about this program, and his wife has Alzheimer's. And I'll tell you that $10,000 just made a huge difference. So we're doing everything we can. And lastly, and then I'm turning it over to Sam, and you're going to want to hear what he says because it's extremely important. Because I'm saving you a couple of bucks and giving you some great ideas. He's going to save you a lot of money. Is owner alert. If you own your property and you have not registered yet, we are the first in California to do title fraud electronic notification, free. Okay? So it's free to sign up, sdarcc.gov. Essentially, if somebody tries to take title or do anything relating to the title of your property or record a lien against you, we send you an electronic notification right away. Okay? In some parts of the county, 9 months later, they might send you a letter. Some parts, they don't send you anything. The problem is, who here has had the credit card fraud notification come through, right? Dave's like, yep, there's that $3,000 bill for Victoria's Secrets. I don't remember spending that,
Yeah.
right? And he's like, and they're doing it in Italy. Wow, I wish I was there. So he says, no, that's not me. The same thing. When we notify you right away, you're going to get a cover. You're going to be able to see if that's you. And then we're going to connect you with the DA right away. By stopping that right there, we limit them from going out to take a loan out on your property, from selling your property. The damage can be much worse if you don't act right away. This puts it at your fingertips. It is free. It takes 5 minutes. Please sign up. And now I'm happy to turn it over to my good friend, Sam, who is absolutely amazing. But there is my contact, my cell phone, my email, and just know it is a true honor to serve. I really mean that. And I'm thankful to the folks in this room that gave me that honor and supported me on that effort. I wake up every day thankful for this opportunity. So, all right. I'm going to rotate with you.
Thank you, Jordan.
Take a breath.
Oh,
Well, it's because he's got even better information for you, so I just want to make sure.
right. Well, I was hoping you would touch on owner alerts. I was going to ask you about that because there's no reason why you wouldn't do it. I've tested it. So when we work through a trust administration project and have a house to sell, when I start the project, I've been signing up for that in my office, and it works like clockwork. When I know the escrow company is going down, sure enough, there's the email that someone's messing with the title to the property. So definitely check that out.
Did you register mine? That's part of the process, or I need to do it myself?
Fortunately, I'm not administering your trust. You wouldn't want that. You wouldn't know about it, but you also wouldn't want that.
I'm not dead yet, right?
Yes, exactly. But yeah, so there's all these, you got the broad overview of all these programs, all these ways where you can save money or not save money on your property taxes. And that is a lot of what we do. So the primary thing we do as estate planning attorneys in my firm, we're protecting families, we're protecting legacies. We're making sure to the greatest extent we can, preventing conflict among families. That's what's most important, that when something tragic happens, that some more tragic things don't compound on top of that. So we want to preserve family dynamics, and we want to protect what people spend their whole life building. So as you can see, it's become a very complicated question, especially here in California, and especially in the past 3 years or so since Prop 19 went into effect. So now we're navigating, when you're making a choice, whether you know it or not right now, where someone is going to supervise what happens to your assets. And it's either going to be the court system, or it's going to be your loved ones who are able to just process and get everything taken care of and moved on. So a lot of times, it comes down to it when the last person on title to a property passes away, we have a potential probate issue here. So if that person was just holding that property as themselves, even if they said, they wrote out a beautiful will and all this stuff, they say, I want this to split the house equally between my 2 children. The 2 children call the realtor and they have an issue. We have to go through a full probate process. I'll spare you the ins and outs of that, but currently we have 3 probate judges in San Diego for our county of 3 million people. We find that it would be optimistic to say that process would take a year in a simple case. We see incredibly long lead times to get hearings, things like that. So in addition to the time, you're then opening up a public record of everything that's going on with your legacy that you built, your assets, a full inventory and appraisal, all these things have to occur. But then there's fees, which, if you have a $10 million house, I would be happy to take that through probate for you. But we try to avoid that nonetheless. So there's a statutory fee schedule that applies to both the executor of an estate as well as the attorney who represents the executor. To give you round numbers, I should almost retire this number now, but let's say you have a condo or something with a gross fair market value of $500,000. That's going to result in about a $13,000 fee due to the attorney, and then also due again to the executor for a total of $26,000. If we have, your pretty run-of-the-mill $1 million property in San Diego, that's more like a $23,000 fee for each. So we have $46,000 plus, it's about $500 to file each petition in the probate court, publication fees. So we run up a bill pretty quick.
I'm just going to say this. Raise your hand here if you thought you worked hard enough to give $50,000 away to court fees and other fees. $50,000. Think about that. That's a huge number.
Yeah. And then so that's one big obvious problem we avoid. But there's also a lot of things that I like to say that, we have this dirty 4-lettered word that we hear in my office, which is the word just. So we hear I'm just going to do a quit claim deed. I think because it sounds quick, it's become popular, but not necessarily so. So we see people make a lot of catastrophic mistakes just with a few little words that they included or didn't include on a deed that can just mess everything up. A few words that they omitted or included that cancels out a right of survivorship, makes it so someone does not automatically receive property, even between spouses sometimes. If you don't know what you're doing when you create that deed, 3 simple words can make all the difference. So all this to say, ideally, when people own property in California, the best solution that we're most commonly providing is a complete estate plan that is based off of a living trust would be the star of the show, where instead of now you're just holding that property as yourself, as an individual on title, we want the deed on your property records to say that you're holding it as a trustee of your trust along with a spouse or whoever it might be. That's what allows us, and then with, there's so much additional planning Now questions about, well, what do you think your children or whoever would want to do with this property? Do you think someone might want to live in that property still? Do you think they might sell it? What are the questions here? So through that process, we're avoiding probate. We're also avoiding, we talked about these two different tax systems at play. So sometimes it's, okay, how do we make sure that we can take advantage of this property tax savings? But at the same time, we're saying, hey, let's be careful and let's make sure that you don't get saddled with, or your loved ones don't get saddled with, even sometimes as much as a 6-figure tax bill when they go to sell the property, because we didn't plan this out and we didn't have the right things in place. That's a common, another beautiful thing about trusts that a will can't accomplish, and sometimes even property records to a certain extent, is if a person becomes incapacitated, rather than cashing out a house and then paying all these 6 figures in taxes, just watching someone's estate, their legacy, kind of get picked apart by different tax bills and fees. A trust would allow a trustee to step in and manage that property, and be able to use that and have so many more options than if we just are holding property in our individual names and leaving it up to chance. So I don't want to get too much into that. We have some flyers and stuff. I'm always available at my office to answer questions. We can go into more detail about estate planning, talk about different family considerations. But I did want to make sure that we open up some time for questions, either for Jordan or myself on any of these topics. So,
Where are your offices at?
Yes, so we have 3 offices now. We have one up in Alpine. If you like the sort of cabin, Wild West type vibes, you go up there. Our main office is here in La Mesa, same building as the Brigantine. That's the best landmark everyone knows. And then we also just opened an office down in Chula Vista in the East Lake area as well. So we try to be accessible to as many people as we can, knowing that people aren't so thrilled with going to the 37th floor of whatever First and A building downtown all the time. So.
Well, Sam, I know we're going to open up for questions, but maybe I'll kick us off if that's okay.
Absolutely.
People say this to me all the time. Well, I already have a trust, so none of these new rules from Prop 19 apply to me. Can you explain which trust, like a irrevocable trust versus a revocable trust? What might be the difference between the two? And if you do have a revocable trust, do these evolving tax laws apply, and when should they come see you when that does happen?
Yeah, definitely. Good question. And it's literally an ever-evolving question. Or even this past summer, there was some IRS guidance that came down regarding irrevocable trusts versus revocable trusts. And so to touch on that, what that means is the vast majority of the trusts that people tend to set up are a revocable living trust, meaning that the people who create the trust can change the trust or get rid of the trust at any time during their lifetime.
This allows you to yell at your kids, you're in the trust, you're out of the trust, you're in the trust, right? I do want to tell you what your rules are, okay?
For sure. And then any revocable trust ultimately becomes irrevocable when the person passes away.
Because you can't yell that at your kids anymore.
Yes.
They might dream it, but it can't really happen.
Yeah. You can try and stick some provisions in there to effectively do the same thing. Irrevocable trusts, on occasion someone might set up a trust from the onset that says this is completely irrevocable. Under certain circumstances, almost always a revocable trust, it's considered a disregarded entity for tax purposes. We just look through it to the grantor's social security number, so we're not creating tax issues. Irrevocable trusts, or a revocable trust when someone passes away and it becomes irrevocable, end up requiring their own separate tax ID number, and then it's more like a corporation or an outside business entity.
I might just break that down a little bit more. So again, revocable means you could yell at your kids, you're in and are out. Revocable means that at that moment you gave it to them, you can't take it back. Right?
Exactly.
So for my office purposes, the day that you actually can't take it back is the day that it actually transfers, and whatever the rules are on that day, that's when we look at it. But if you could start going back and forth, I gave it to you, I took it away, you haven't really gotten rid of it at that point. It's just in a holding. But what Sam was saying in the trust, that's a holding vehicle. We treat that as if it's you. But if you put a property in like an LLC or something else, that's a whole different ballgame. And again, you still need a great attorney to help you through that. But some of these rules that we talked about don't apply. So really kind of navigating some of that is really important.
Definitely. And so you people can give up certain tax incentives by thinking, oh, I want an irrevocable trust for some reason. They do it, not realizing. The thing that we're seeing a ton now is, most people, the average person, if they own a home and they've owned it for a long time, it can very easily be the bulk of their wealth. And they think, oh, they just kind of like leave it as is. But with the laws changing in the past few years, you used to be able to sort of get away with that. And people will be like, oh yeah, we'll keep it for a while. And, us siblings will hang on to it. And then siblings don't want to be in business any longer because siblings do this. And they're like, oh, well, just buy out my interests. So we talked about these exemptions from reassessment, but what you didn't see on the list is a sibling-to-sibling transfer. So without making sure that we've updated this plan, if we do think that we might hang on to this house, if we're not planning for what that means to hold on to a house, potentially run into just giving up tax savings that we could have planned for and easily taken advantage of.
So one quick question. I did it, so I know it, but just for the information for the group that's here, what does it cost to generally get somebody's will and trust set up?
Yeah, you'll see signs stapled to the telephone pole. I don't recommend calling that number. Yeah, it's not a deal, trust me. I would say average, between individuals, married couples, you're looking at about $2,000 to $3,000, including, fees, things like that, getting everything all put together.
Well, I'll tell you why it's not a deal. It might make you feel good in the moment, but really, you don't really know if it was good until you passed. And then you can't do anything about it. It's already locked in. So, if somebody doesn't have a reputable, an investment in quality here is really worth it. I've seen a lot, and I've seen a lot of folks, we get the brunt end of some bad work and having to deliver bad news because somebody wasn't thoughtful and they're not spending time with you and your family. But part of this too, Sam, is you need to start talking to your kids and asking, okay, well, what do we want to do with the second home? Or which home would you want to keep? And, these are the questions that before we had a lot more flexibility that is out the door. And so if you're looking to truly build that generational wealth, thoughtfulness and planning is more important than it's ever been before.
Definitely.
Good.
And how often should the trust be updated?
Hopefully you'll know where it is at all times. Hopefully you will remember what it says. But it depends. Sometimes we have these major shifts in the laws where we say, hey, this is worth a second look. There's not really an expiration date on a trust, but I always recommend watch out for major changes in family dynamics. Someone gets married, someone gets unmarried. We have births of new family members or adoptions, things like that. So look out for key life events. It's usually something we talk about a lot and do things like this if there are major changes in the law. But there's no, it's not like buying milk at the grocery store where, you didn't look at your trust for 3 years, it's done, it's not going to work anymore. So it depends on the family dynamics and it depends on what happens in legislature sometimes. But I recommend at least every 2 to 3 years, make sure you do take a good thorough look through and know what's going on.
And by the way, when you're hiring the right professional, they'll reach out to you when the law changes. They're keeping an eye on that for you too.
Certainly.
But I think from a personal family perspective, they're not going to know, like Sam said, who's going to get the benefit of it. So as who's giving it or who getting the benefit of it changes, that's when you need to reach out and say, hey, Sam, we just had another grandchild. What do you think does this impact us? Or, hey, Sam, unfortunately, this person passed. Did we need to change any, right? Is that fair?
Exactly. Yep.
Hold on. Sorry about that. There are people in line.
Oh, okay.
So,
Sam, are most trusts, like mine is revocable, but upon my death, do most of them become irrevocable?
Yes.
Is that how it is? Okay,
Yeah.
so nothing can be done. Yeah.
Well, because again, you've passed and you can't do anything.
Yeah, because you're...
Unless you're special and
Yeah.
you're able to. We've seen seances, but they've tried in my office. It didn't work.
Can you talk real quickly about funding?
yeah, so that's where, sometimes if you see a deal that's too good to be true, that's kind of the first thing that gets cut out. So think of a trust like a wallet where, maybe it's a nice, beautiful wallet, but if you're not putting things into that wallet, it's not going to do you any good.
And Sam, I know we have a young lady here that works with kids that have autism.
Yeah.
you talk about special needs trusts?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So, we always want to make sure that we title property correctly to the trust, or sometimes with accounts, we're naming the trust as a beneficiary, opening an account for the trust. But we need to establish the trust. Think of the trust as sort of the hub, and then we have our spokes, which are our connections to our different assets around that. That becomes incredibly important, especially special needs planning is something very near and dear to my heart, where you're planning for, okay, this trust, I need this to use my property to take care of someone who can't totally or partially care for themselves after the parent or the caretaker ultimately passes away or becomes incapacitated. So that is huge for, especially, a lot of times we're not seeing the 22-year-old couple who just had a baby, running to the estate planning attorneys, not first on their mind when Disneyland's just up the street. But that's where we can add the most value, because we want to plan for what happens if parents go on date night and both of them were to pass away. The babies can't own and manage a house for themselves and order groceries. Maybe babies can order groceries on phones now. It's scary, but
And Sam, undoubtedly, and I know San Diego is such a great giving community with such a big heart. Every time I happen to have one of these seminars, there's somebody there that is like, I don't have kids. I just want to give. I'm a charitable person.
Yeah.
Is there something for those people too?
Yeah, definitely. So, and that's another one where, if you're not careful,
And the East County Chamber can be a beneficiary of that, right?
could. And the
Okay,
Chamber Foundation even.
Just making sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I got you, Rick. Don't worry.
Yeah.
The chairman gets everything, right?
But yeah.
Then you're going to get a lunch and learn with District Attorney Summer Steffen.
But a lot of times we see people who say, oh, just give all my stuff to veterans organizations, things like that. Okay, that's great, but how will that happen? Who is going to, you think you're going to gift your house, let's say, to a charitable organization, but the reality is it ends up, becoming sort of a abandoned, sort of rundown property that everyone's asking what's going on because there wasn't a plan in place, and maybe people don't know about it. Maybe people, no one's motivated to go through that probate process and do that whole thing. So, whether it's planning for, just your kids who can care for themselves, whether it's incapacitated successor beneficiaries, or even charitable organizations, we don't want people's legacy to go to waste.
Yeah, the question.
Oh, no, he answered it. I was going to ask about the special needs one.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. Then there is two kinds of trust, like changeable, we said.
Revocable and
Yeah.
irrevocable.
Yeah, that's why I'm planning to do it. But if I do the changeable ones, say, I tried to ask this question, but he mentioned it.
Mhm.
When you try to donate, say to the church, to the nonprofit organization, and then you change your mind, he said, oh, if your kids,
Mhm.
like he said, they don't deserve nothing.
Yeah.
They're not listening. And that's why I'm planning.
Or because they're so wonderful and successful, they don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
That's why I'm gonna.
That's what my
Definitely.
mom says, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna change it right away from donate to the
Yeah.
kids.
And that's the beauty of a revocable trust is, we'll have a public record with your property records, just that now it's titled to a trust. But no one's entitled to know what the provisions of that trust are as far as gifts until and unless something happens to you. So at that
We're
point,
gonna get discounts too from you if we do it.
So, I always say that we try to charge as fair and as reasonable of a price as possible. I don't want you to feel like you missed the Black Friday sale on estate planning. So, we can quote it out at a flat rate.
those?
Yeah.
That's a very
Now-
good price for a trust. I've seen some attorneys, 3,500 or 4,000.
Now, Sam,
Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm. So if someone has an LLC or a company, does he have to or she separate the trust? They can be integrated in a property and so can you tell more about what are some
probably corporations, LLCs, can those go in trusts?
Absolutely, yeah. So think of a pyramid, not a pyramid scheme, but a pyramid, where the trust oftentimes is at the top, and then underneath that we have all sorts of different types of assets. Where You might have your house titled directly to your trust. You might have an LLC that is assigned to the trust. You might have an investment account over here that you retitle to your trust.
Coca-Cola shares,
Yes.
Don't worry, we got you. But, Sam, a lot of people come to my office. They say, you're the recorder. Don't you have a record of my trust?
Mhm.
And my answer to them is,
Nope.
I don't.
Yeah.
So it's upon you choosing somebody that's a great attorney, so that way not only do you and your family have a copy of your trust, but also your attorney. And I see this all the time. Does anybody know where this attorney is anymore and what happened to all the trusts? And so that could also cause you a lot of consternation. Even if you have the right document written, if it gets lost and it's not properly cared for, and you don't have the great, consistent professional in the community, you could also be still put at a disadvantage. So these are all things to consider when choosing the right person.
No, I see it as a realtor where the trusts were created so long ago, and they just have no idea where that attorney is.
Yep.
Or where the trust is. Yeah. I work in
Unravel
title.
it, yeah,
all the
try
time.
to unravel it.
Or bad trusts not being done correctly, and they have to go to probate as well. So it's important to someone like Sam.
Okay, anybody
Barbie
has a question?
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to Dave and then Barb again.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So there's a lot of activity in the
Great.
state legislation on undo Prop 13. Can you give us any idea of what's going on with that?
Yeah, so Prop 13, which is what locks in the property taxes, we constantly see this effort to undo Prop 13 on various levels. Prop 13 not only addressed property taxes, but it also addressed adding new taxes. So on the upcoming ballot, there's going to be a discussion as to what the threshold or what percentage you're going to need in order to pass a tax and also add or make amendments on taxes and constitution. And
Yeah, so that's not in the TV commercials.
no, and so well, most people know Prop 13 is it locks in their property taxes, but it was really a taxpayer protection proposition. And so what they're going to look to do is to reduce the threshold from 2/3 to 50% plus one to add a tax.
Yeah.
And so when I talked about the 1%, it actually is 1% plus bonds and indebtedness. So that means that if you have a school bond or a water bond or other things that are being used that you as a community pass or other taxes, this next ballot initiative you're going to vote as whether that should be easier or maintain that same higher threshold. Now, I do say that we have seen, because of the higher threshold, more accountability for taxpayers. They tend to have more oversight committees. They tend to have more accountability in order to show the public that this will actually be a good bond. But there is that effort to reduce that to 50% plus.
Yeah, just real quick, I read that full proposition last 2 years ago when they tried it the first time. It's like 19 pages. It took me 3 days to read it. And it's buried deep in page like 14 about what the good things are. And it's a mess.
Well, I'll tell you, I am absolutely dedicated to the protection of Prop 13. A few years ago, they tried to what's called split the roll, means treat residential properties different than commercial properties. And my office takes the position that our job is to help digest and explain to you these very complicated changes. Even Prop 19, a lot of people are like, I don't know if I really understood what I voted for. And that these changes and reduction in the parent to child is different than what they expected. We try to do as much education, but the proponents of it are constantly attacking independent offices like mine for speaking the truth. So we actually just got cleared by the FPPC, that's the Ethics Commission on Campaigns, saying we did the right thing. My office, by speaking what the facts were on changes to Prop 13, we're not campaigning, we're just trying to tell you. But people like to mute those voices. And so having places like the chamber where you can have these more in-depth conversations and explain to people what these real changes look like and how that impacts are really important. And unfortunately, we see this with the Attorney General playing games with the names on items. We just don't name things with what it actually does. So when you go vote on it, it makes it harder to understand. They put really nice names on it if they like it. And if they don't like it, they give it really bad names. And so the thumb of justice and transparency has been messed with, and we need to realign that.
Barb, you had a question?
Oh, yeah, I wanted to know, so, I should have probably asked you this when I was in your office, but my trust that you set up for me, it gets funded upon my death.
Mhm.
So does that mean that somebody has to tell you that I died and then you get everything that's in it and get it put over to how it's supposed to go?
Yeah, so
Is how that works?
that's part of the job of trustee is, or really anyone who's your successor fiduciary is they're the one, you don't have to notify beneficiaries that they're receiving a gift, but it's probably a good idea just to mention it to the person you name as trustee. Hey, you're on the hook if something happens to me. Congratulations. So things like the death notifications, things like that, the person looking at it say, oh, I should probably call this attorney. Marshaling of assets is what we call it, the formal name for whether it's an executor of a will or a trustee of a trust, for gathering the person's assets all within the umbrella of their oversight. So that's what that process entails initially, is that administration, making sure, notifying banks that say, okay, if the trust is the beneficiary, okay, we need you to make this payable to the trust, things like that. Getting property records switched over, filing those affidavits timely, make sure we don't.
Don't worry, you're gonna be dead at this point. You don't have to do it. But here's it: when you pass, when you set up the trust and you pass, everything moves. Whatever you had in the trust, and that kind of reminded me actually when to update your trust. When a change happens in the family, when a change happens in the law, and when the change happens in your finances. So if you win the lottery, you better go back to Sam, if you're not trying to spend it all before it gets there.
The price might go up if that happens.
He's like, I'll meet you at the Lapa Lapa for drinks on that one. But my point is that if you've already set your house up in the trust with Sam, and that the trustee has it in the trust at that point, it's moved. When you die, you can't have it. It's already moved over because you've set it up. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just a couple of comments going back to Prop 13. Is one on a fixed income. It's been in my house for 31 years. My concern is that if Prop 13 gets overturned, my property taxes are going to spike, and it's going to push a whole mess of seniors out on the street to the point of where I can see a Boston Tea Party occurring here in California. People are very frustrated, and there's a lot of conflicting language in the bills that are out there. And John Q. Citizen, probably everybody sitting at this table doesn't understand what we're up against. There's been so many moves to overturn Prop 13, and here we are again.
I'll tell you two things, Steve. One, we have not done enough to help homeownership. We have a declining rate of homeownership. My office tracks it. And so one of the things that we have is this homeowner's exemption that saves you $70. And I know a lot of you see that and you're like, $70? Is that really changing my day? A tank of gas or in other states, it's $1,000, $1,500. And when this was passed over 50 years ago, it should have been marked to increase, because they increase our taxes over time, but they haven't increased our benefit of home ownership. And so we need to make sure, one, and I'm advocating for an increase in the homeowner's exemption, that doesn't go to corporations. It doesn't go to people that are not living here in California. We know that these are residents and that it supports home ownership. And you're right. That's why great programs, Joel Anderson helped a program to help keep seniors in their homes and off the streets. You get an extra $500 from the county if you're on the edge, because it's cheaper to keep you in your home, as you should be, than to let you fall on the streets. It's better for society. Yeah. But second, I get this question all the time. Well, what do we have? In other states, they have a discount for seniors. They don't pay into the school district, so there's some sort of discount. Well, Prop 13 is a discount. I'll just say that. It is the greatest discount. Every day I run the numbers for that person, because I'm afraid they're going to say, well, we'll give all these seniors a discount, but in exchange, get rid of Prop 13. Prop 13 every day of the week is saving people more money. No, and it's younger families too, by the way. If you bought a home in 2015, 2016, 2017, your home value may have doubled. My home did, okay? And my taxes would have more than doubled. And I'll tell you, for a lot of us, our salaries didn't match that tax increase, right? Prop 13 has made homeownership affordable for seniors and new families. But I do think that we should expand the homeowners exemption. We should be doing that to help out the folks that need to appreciate homeownership and encourage more homeownership. And there's also legislation that's been out there to say, hey, let's help people with savings accounts so they can save up to buy a home, not pay taxes on that money, kind of like an IRA. And the state government just keeps on rejecting these opportunities to help people achieve homeownership. So, but there's advocates out there like myself and others across the state that are fighting for this.
Let's do the last question since we are on a little bit of a time limit here. Do we have any last question? Go ahead.
You can add the life insurance to the trust, or has different because they have their own beneficiaries?
You can name the trust as a beneficiary of a life insurance policy. On a case-by-case basis, we decide whether that's a good idea or not. Sometimes it serves an important purpose. Other times it might be easier just to direct that directly to reasonable adults who can manage funds like that.
One last comment.
One last one.
One last quick comment. I'd like to thank you both on behalf of the chamber.
I was going to do that.
Well, I know. I'm not trying to steal your thunder, but
he's better looking than you, Tom.
I have profound respect for these two individuals.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, great job.
Oh, I do a round of applause.